Good evening. Welcome to John Higgins Live. I'm John Higgins with my guest, John Westhaver. And John is a sole survivor of a fatal car crash that shocked the entire community. John has joined me here tonight. I'm so grateful to have you here tonight, John. What a story that you have. Really good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
So, John, I do want to tell everybody I heard you the other day at the St. Stephen High School, your presentation, your tour, which you were on.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning, absolutely fantastic. 200 students there. You could have heard a pin drop in that whole auditorium, that gymnasium. You started your story off with your story, your experience, your horrific experience. How did it start?
So I was a regular teenage guy in high school. Lots of friends. Typical teenage kid, like to, party, go out with friends, road trips. Academic, somewhat academic kid. Involved in sports. I was a wrestler. Lifted weights growing up. On April 29th, 1994, I was involved in a fatal car crash. It started out as a regular Friday night for us. It was about a month and a half before our graduation, and we met up at the local pool hall in our hometown of St. Stephen, and it was myself, Jason McKeeman, Jimmy Zagrafis, and Aaron Williams, and we were looking for something to do, being teenage guys. We hadn't heard of any parties yet, so we decided to go on a road trip. We decided to go to Macadam. We heard there was a pool hall there. Never been there before to this pool hall. So we're like, all right, let's go for a cruise. We'll go on a road trip, go check this place out. And being teenage guys, just look for fun. And first thing was, no matter what we do, we always have a sober driver. So we got Jimmy, who was the driver that night. He had a car, and he decided to drive. He had to work the next day. So he was like, guys, I'll drive. I'll stay sober, no drugs or alcohol in the system whatsoever. So he drove. So number one, we had the sober driver, and number two, for us, we weren't of age to buy alcohol.
Uh-huh.
So we've managed to find someone to buy it for us. So booze in hand and a sober driver, we set off on a road trip. Once we hit the highway, we all cracked our beer, carrying on, goofing off, being 4 teenage guys in a car, 3 of us drinking, having fun. The stereo's cranked. We get to the pool hall. We're playing pool, we're flirting with the girls, we're having a good time, and everything of this is great. Now, we're not old enough to drink in the pool hall, so, every so often we run out to the car, slam a beer back, run back inside, flirt with the girls some more, dance around, have some more fun. And until Jimmy who was our driver, decided to leave. He's like, guys, I gotta work the next day. He's like, I'm leaving. Now, we had a choice. We could have stuck around and played some pool some more, had some more fun, flirted with the girls some more, but we decided to leave. Our choice was to stick around or go home with Jimmy. We chose to get a ride with Jimmy, and because he was our DD, he was our designated driver. So we all jumped in the car, grabbed another beer, we cheers each other, cranked the stereo, we peel out of the parking lot and fly down the highway. And just being 4 teenage guys, we were those teenagers that was, out for fun, living life to the fullest, to the max, never really thinking about our choices, never really thinking about how our choices could impact, not only us, but our family and our friends and the community. And obviously there's alcohol involved. We're drinking, we're having a good time. That impairs our ability to make safe choices as well. About halfway back, we pulled over in a parking lot at the corner of the Macadam turnoff on number 3. If you've ever been up through number 3,
Know it well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a turnoff there, and there's a parking lot there. So we pull over, we get out, and we all run to the bushes, relieve ourselves, get back in the car, grab another beer, cheese each other, and we peel out of the parking lot, and we're just flying down the highway. We're just doing our thing, not thinking anything could go wrong, never thinking about what could happen. And that was the last thing I remember. And then I wake up in a hospital a month later, and I'm completely covered in bandages. I've got a broken arm. My arm is in a brace. I'm connected to a multitude of life-saving devices. I've got intravenous monitors measuring my heart, my blood pressure, all this stuff, and I'm completely covered in bandages, and I have no idea what happened. And in that moment when I woke up, my whole teenage world had changed. My whole life had changed. I went from being a fun-loving teenage guy to living in a nightmare that no person, let alone a teenager, should live. I later learned of, that we were involved in a car crash, and our driver was speeding, lost control of the car, skid out of control, hit the ditch, rolled several times, hit a cell phone pole, and I was the only person to walk away. And when I first woke up from that coma, it was, it was unreal. It was scary. I was never a sick kid. I had been in the hospital, a couple times growing up, but I was in the hospital once, maybe overnight, for a surgery on my shoulder, and that was kind of it. So I was never really a sick kid. So
you were a wrestler?
Yeah, I was a wrestler. I was a heavyweight wrestler. And so I was never really a sick kid, so I never really got experience with the hospital. So when I woke up, my whole world had changed. I noticed that I'm in a hospital room, but I don't know where I'm at. And I had all kinds of questions, like, where are my friends? Where are these guys at? What happened? What's going on? And I remember someone telling me not to try to talk, that everything was going to be okay, but it wasn't. My whole world had changed, and I had later found out that my friends were killed. Dealing with the loss dealing with the disfigurement from the burns, the trauma from the burns, was hard. What was harder than that was finding out my friends were killed. So there was just, like I said, it was a living nightmare for me, living those initial days. And had it not been for the support of my community, my family, my friends, St. Stephen, in the surrounding communities, they had not been for that support, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have gotten through it. I wouldn't have had that support to help me deal with what I was dealing with. And what I was dealing with was, the facial disfigurements, being a burn survivor, all the conversations that comes up around that, but also being scared that I lost my friends, hating the fact that I lost my friends, dealing with the blame that I was, the shame, the guilt that I had when I found out that my friends were killed, because at first they wouldn't tell me that they were killed. They waited until they thought I was strong enough, and when they thought I was strong enough, then they told me. And I remember the day it was Pam, Jason's mom, had come in, and I was wondering why he wasn't here, and I kept asking where he was at, and I was kind of angry inside because he's supposed to be here. He's my best friend. He's right. As I talk to the kids at high schools and in schools, I say, how many of you have best friends? And here I am in the hospital, and my friends are coming to visit me, but my best friend and two other friends are not. Why are they not coming here? And so I was kind of angry inside when I saw it, but I was, why isn't he here? And then they sat me down, and they told me that they were killed, and Jason was killed, and it was something that I struggled with for years. The blame. I had it that I was the only person to survive. I felt like I was punished. I felt like I was being punished because I survived. I had to live. I was left behind. I felt that people were judging me, blaming me for surviving.
All of these guilt feelings going through your mind.
Yeah, and then you run through your brain, like, is there something I could have done to change it? And of course, had I chose to speak up, to not tell her, and to tell our driver to slow down, to not be drinking that night, and there's this other gamut of questions. All these things go through your head, and I was hurting. And anybody that initially saw me in those first few years, I think they knew I was hurting. And it was hard to really help with the hurting, because nobody really knew how to, just come out and say how can I support you, and how can I help you, in the in the initial stages, I had a lot of support from my family and friends, and my parents. My dad was a huge help, and he gave me the space to blow up and get angry and cry and get frustrated. And, he didn't judge that, and he gave me that space to get it out of my system.
Right.
But I was just an arrogant teenager as well. I was 18 years old. 240-pound heavyweight wrestler. I was a tough kid, and I grew up tough. I grew up. You had to be tough. And when I was in the hospital, they suggested that I see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Talk to somebody about what I went through or what I was going through, and how to kind of navigate these first few years, because when your face and your body changes, man, there's a lot of stuff that comes up, a lot of things you have to deal with. And being the kid I was, I just I'll do it myself. I'll figure it out. I'll be fine. I'll be okay. Not wanting to get that help, and looking back, I wish I would have got that help.
Seriously, I was just really
I wish I would have got that help, because it would have made a huge difference.
In what way, John? In what do you think?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with was like around how people were perceiving me. So a lot of the questions was like looking different. I grew up part Native, or I'm part Native, and I grew up in St. Stephen, and it's in a predominantly non-Native community. And growing up as a Native kid, I was a fat kid too. And so people used to bully me and tease me. And I remember being teased a lot as a kid, and I used to go home crying all the time. And just one day my father was like, stop coming home crying. Stand up for yourself. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of yourself. And I did, and I just started to grow at the same time, and I grew taller than most of the kids in my class, sort of thing. So people stopped bullying me as much, but I still got bullied. When I was burnt, it was almost like, okay, I am ugly now. I am that ugly kid. Oh. And it was hard to deal with that. But I think what helped me the most is people didn't treat me really differently. My family, my friends, they still joked and carried on with me and treated me like the same guy. They still made, teased me, not like bullied me, but, teased me like friends do.
Yes, exactly.
And I still had to take the garbage out. I still had to do the dishes and things like that there. I didn't get away with, sitting around doing nothing and wallowing, My family, made sure I was out and doing stuff in the public eye, sort of thing. I don't think they really knew how much I needed that, and how powerful that was.
As for people to be normal around you.
Well, just getting used to it. Getting used to like the stares and the looks and things like that there. So giving me the opportunity to kind of see, okay, so now I'm there, I'm doing it. How do I get through this? And so when you have a counselor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, and you work through these beforehand, or as you're bumping up against them, you have someone to talk to about it. You can kind of strategize and talk about what you're dealing with in the moment. I didn't have that. I just was dealing with it on the go and dealing with it with whatever manner I knew how to deal with it. And sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't good. And there were times where, I'm ashamed that I blew up at people, and I was angry, and I got frustrated, and I screamed and I yelled, and I pissed people off, and I pushed people away. And, it was just really, I was scared.
Exactly.
And if I've done that to you, I apologize to you for doing that. I'm sorry. I was in a place of hurting in those first few years, so I'm sorry for that. If I've impacted your life in a negative way.
As the community, when the accident happened, right? The community went into literally shock.
Yeah, shock and awe, for sure. Shock, awe, and trauma.
3 young boys have been killed. No. The 4th boy is not expected to survive. That was the talk around. He's in St. John.
Yeah.
He's in a burn unit in St. John. His body's burnt. 75% of his body is burnt. He's not suspected to survive.
Yeah.
Again, it was shock, and it's unbelievable I remember it as if it was yesterday, and I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, and that's great that you're the one interviewing me, because it's people like you that were firsthand there. You knew what it was like.
And my wife and Pam worked together in the same office for years. Okay, and I can remember talking about, this can't be true. This can't be happening.
Yeah.
We got a phone call. Yes, this is one of those tragedies too. You remember exactly where you were when it happened, when you got the news.
Yeah.
We were at home and the phone rang, and it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was Pam's daughter, Andrea. And she said to Trudy, Trudy, Mom won't be at work on Monday because Jason has died.
Yeah. What was that like for you? What was that like in that moment?
It was, first of all, what? No, this can't be true. I think the first thing I said to Trudy was, you're sure it was Andrea? Call somebody else.
Yeah.
Is this true?
Yeah.
Right? And then, seriously, right after that, silence.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Trudy never said a word to me. I never said a word to her. We just sat there in silence. What?
Trying to figure it out, yeah.
Right, trying to figure it out. And then tragedy upon tragedy. 3 other teenagers from high school, graduation year.
Yeah.
3 others.
Three of us were graduating, then Aaron had graduated the year before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the whole community was silent.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, of course, we kept hearing John, the 4th boy, he's not going to make it. It'll be a miracle if he survives this.
Yeah.
By golly, you did.
Yeah. In the initial stages.
When you were in the hospital, right? How many operations did you need?
I've had over 35 surgeries to date, probably more than that now at last count. But I've had a lot of reconstructive work. Here in New Brunswick, I've had, I love to say that I'm blessed to have had, some of Canada's top surgeons work on me.
Right.
Here in New Brunswick, Dr. Lalonde and Dr. Sparks, they were an amazing team. And everybody that worked here in New Brunswick on surgeries. And then I moved to Victoria and had more surgeries with Dr. Naismith, Dr. Juritzkowitz, a few other doctors. I've had Canada's top guys work on me, and I'm very blessed to have that. In the initial stages, they didn't expect me to live. They didn't. I was sustained burns to 75% of my body, 1st to 4th degree burn. 50% of my body was 3rd and 4th. Those are critical burns. Those are life-threatening burns. What they did is my parents arrived at the hospital, and they didn't expect me to live. And so what they did is they put me in a drug-induced coma because I wasn't expected to go through the night. The first 24 or 40 hours, I wasn't expected to make it. Mm-hmm. So they suggested that they put me in a drug-induced state so I didn't experience the pain and I could pass easily. And that's what they did. They put me in a drug-induced coma and they let me die. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I didn't die. I didn't die. Stubborn, pig-headed guy that doesn't listen.
Excellent.
And I didn't die. But it was, it was a nightmare. It was every time I went for surgery, there was no guarantee that I was going to wake out. There was no guarantee that I'd make it. My body kept shutting down. My lungs, my liver, my kidneys failed. I died 3 times in the operating table. There was no guarantee that I was going to make it. And every time that I went for surgery, my parents, my family, the community, they were, they were devastated because they weren't sure if I was going to make it. I put my family through hell. The choice that I made that night to get into that car, to not tell the driver to slow down, to be drinking that night, every choice that I made that night put my family and my friends through hell. All of us teenagers in that car that night, all of our choices put our families through hell. And when I look back, I see that nothing I'll ever do will fix that. But when I talk to students about road safety, I get to make a difference in their world.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, okay? And when we're going to come back, I want to talk, you're a motivator, you're a speaker, okay? I want to talk about that. Let's take a break.
Sure.
We're going to come back in a couple of minutes, back with John Higgins Live and with my special guest, John Westhaver. We'll be right back. Welcome back with my special guest, John Westhaver. Unbelievable. What a story. Courage. Guilt. And once you heard, just go back a little bit.
Yeah.
So here you are, you're in the hospital, you're burnt, disfigured.
Yeah, disfigured, like.
Can't believe this.
Yeah.
Hurt.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, my friends are gone.
Yeah.
My best friend's gone. My friends are gone.
Yeah.
How in the world do you carry on? How, again, it's like, how do you've got to have an inner strength in you somewhere that you've got to have.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Did you ever say, I'm not going to go on, I'm not going to carry on?
Yeah, no, I never had that thought. Like, I always had the thought that I gotta kind of persevere, gotta get through this, and that I will get through this. And you know, I like being bullied and teased as a kid kind of helped me get a little bit of toughness, sort of thing, and resilience.
Yeah.
But you asked, how did I keep going forward? How did I keep moving forward? And I'm often reminded of the poem, The Footprints in the Sand. And there's two sets of footprints. Then there's one set of footprints in the time of despair and upset, and then there's two sets of footprints again. And a reference is, being with Jesus, and Jesus left you in time of need, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the poem it talks about, no, I carried you when you couldn't carry yourself.
Exactly.
And I'm often, and that's what it was like, because my family, my friends, my community supported me when I was struggling, when I didn't have the inner strength to get through. They were there to support me and help me get through this. And they gave me the courage to keep living and to keep moving forward. And because of the community that I grew up in, St. Stephen, and the surrounding communities, because of the people here, the support, I am the person I am today. I get to make a difference for a lot of people, because not a lot of people that have experienced burn trauma have that resilience, that ability to not only share about it, but let alone talk about it with other people.
Yeah.
And so because of the support that I've had, I'm able to, share my story with students. And I've been speaking this is the 17th year I've been speaking. I've done over 700 talks across Canada and the U.S. Tens of thousands of probably hundreds of thousands of students. And I get to make a difference in their world through sharing about it. But I also work with the burn survivors. I run a support group in Victoria, British Columbia, where I live now, with the Firefighter Burn Fund of Victoria. And I run the peer support group there, helping people that have been through burn trauma, helping them get through that initial trauma stage to get back into living life, and helping the family members, deal with whatever they're dealing with, the questions, the things that come up. And I also sit on the Canadian Burn Survivor Community panel, and every 2 years we have a conference in different cities, and the conferences are designed to have burn survivors come and hear from different speakers of what it's like to live as a burn survivor. What did they tap into to move through the trauma to be living life again, per se. And so I sit on that board. Co-chair that, and just beginning giving back and making a difference. And as I've been doing road safety for 17 years now, so my next phase is to do more overcoming adversity talks and courageous leadership talks to high school students. And that's why I'm actually here in New Brunswick. This speaking, I'm here on what's called the Zero Fatality Tour. It's a program that I created in 2016. I noticed that there's not a lot of speakers that come through the area and do tours. Not a lot of resources back here for speakers per se. So I created this tour to help students, help them hear what it's like to be involved in a fatal car crash, and help talk about the choices that they make going forward, whether it be impaired driving, whether it be drugs or alcohol, talking about distracted driving, talking about speed, seatbelts, things like that there. So I created the tour, the Zero Fatality Tour, in 2016. And each year it's grown popularity. We're now getting more people on board. We're getting more schools involved, and schools are recognizing it. And more people are helping out with the tour and helping evolve the program. And what my mission is to have it evolve into a program that's offered in the schools every year, that's recognized by the schools, where they say, yeah, we want to have that program in school. But I want to develop it so much so that we have other speakers involved as well. So I've got a few other speakers that I work with that have been involved in fatal crashes that are speakers. So we're going to incorporate them as well. But to do that, we need funding. So
Exactly.
So I'm in the stage right now of developing the funding, getting the funding, grants, things like that there. I'm not an expert in that area by no means. So, I'm always reaching out, trying to figure out how do we best get these things, and always looking for support. So if you're really good at grant research and applying for grants, you want to help out, we'd love to have you. We pay with hugs and kisses and love, but,
Exactly.
but the goal is to really have some people on board to run the program so that it has a life of its own, so we don't have to worry about it, so that we can actually offer this to the schools and be able to pay the speakers that come in. It takes a lot of funds to put together a program like this here. Ideally I'd like to see like the big names on board, like Tim Hortons, Irving's, Sobeys, things like that there. I'd love to have the DOT on, the Department of Transportation, Ministry of Transportation, also Ministry of Education as well, and have all these guys put money towards the program to help evolve it.
I just want to let everybody know.
Yeah.
John loves to answer questions. The phone number is, feel free to call, please, 529-8826. If there are any students watching, parents watching, if you have a question for John, please call in. It's 529-8826. If it's out of this area, if you live out of this area, 506-529-8826. Or if you're out of the country, 855-529-8826. So any questions at all, please feel free to call. John says he doesn't mind any question, right?
That's fine, yeah.
He loves them. So give a call. The tour it's taking you across the Maritimes, taking you
across Canada, yeah. Across Canada and into the U.S., I've been lucky to speak in most provinces in Canada: BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, not yet Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, not yet PEI or Newfoundland or the territories, but I'm working towards those.
Yeah.
And I've also been into the States as well, as doing talks down there. I did a tour with the Connecticut Burn Scare Foundation down in Connecticut. I did that tour for 7 years, and it was a really good tour. And I currently work with 2 insurance companies in Canada, the ICBC, which is the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. So we have a program in BC called the Road Safety Program, and we have a team of probably about 7 or 8 different speakers that travel around BC talking to students about road safety. And I've been on that team now full-time for about, let's say 12 years. And so it's a great team, it's a great resource. And Manitoba also has a program. They have Manitoba Public Insurance. They have a program called Friends for Life, And after I'm done this tour, so I'm here in New Brunswick for 3 weeks. When I'm done here, I go to Manitoba, and I'll be there for a week, and I'm doing 9 schools with their tour.
Wow.
This is the 3rd year that I've been involved with that program, so it's really just making a difference in other provinces and other communities, and really just sharing the message.
And to get this message through to students, what you've gone through. What I'm thinking about is that when the students come into the gym, when I went to your presentation at the St. Stephen High School, you seriously could hear a pin drop throughout that whole auditorium.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just amazed at the fact that you had a choice. Okay? You could have either done this, right?
Yeah.
Or you could have said, the heck with it. I'm just going to go whatever.
Yeah.
Never entered your mind.
Yeah, no, it's funny, often people, have always, wondered, like, what is his life going to be like, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was in BC for a few years, and I was flying back to New Brunswick for something, and I ran into my surgeon in one of the airports, and I got a chance to talk to him. His name was Dr. Lalonde, and he says, I often wondered about you and what would happen or what would come of you, because you come from St. Stephen, and you didn't really come from a lot of resources in that community. Not really a wealth. We weren't wealthy. We grew up in I see poverty, but he says, I often wondered what your life would be, has amounted to, and he was quite surprised that I got into public speaking and motivational speaking.
He was surprised?
Yeah, and so it was. I think moving to BC was a great choice for me. I moved there after college. I moved there originally to get into computer work, so I was finishing college doing computers. Moved into, just ended up working different jobs when I got to Victoria, and got involved with the Firefighter Burn Fund of Victoria, BC, and the peer support group there. And a lot of people were saying I motivate them, and so I, never really thought anything of it. And then there was this occupational therapist I used to go to her after having different surgeries, and she's like, you gotta share your story with people. And she had mentioned a couple different speakers and stuff like that there, so he was like, oh, maybe I'll look into it. And got involved with the Firefighter Burn Fund, and they supported me initially, and they've been supporting me ever since. They helped me get established as a speaker. I did Toastmasters and things like that there. Got involved with ICVC in the beginning, and just kind of ran with it. But in the beginning stages, I was that arrogant teenager. I was that teenager that knew it all. I had a great story, but oh my God, I was a horrible speaker. I shouldn't say I was a horrible speaker. I just wasn't a great speaker, and it was just.
Man, have you ever turned that around?
She was, one of the ladies. She says, sometimes you were inconsistent with when I would, do the talks and things like that there. I think that was just because I was just learning the skill set needed to be. Plus, I was also, I was still dealing with stuff around the crash. I was still dealing with, how do I share it in such a way that I don't hurt anybody and don't re-traumatize people. So I was still struggling with how to do that, and then how to, get my story across in a way that's going to make a difference. And, over the years, I, kind of flipped and flopped and, struggled as I kind of went through trying to figure my own way out. And it wasn't until I did some work with an organization called Landmark Worldwide. They're a personal growth training development company, and started doing some personal growth work in dealing with some of the stuff that I was dealing with as a burn survivor, as a sole survivor of a fatal car crash. And in doing that work, it just had me naturally be more engaged with students and really just focus on, resolving some of the issues that I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. Living life as a burn survivor, dealing with the loss of my friends, because as I resolved those issues, I could speak from it differently, because I was I'm not being clear with it. And
Yes, you
I
are.
noticed, I noticed that's what I'm doing now. So,
No,
what I was dealing with as a burn survivor, as a fatal car crash survivor, is I didn't want people to blame me for the crash. I didn't want people to. I
Exactly.
didn't want people to hate me because I survived.
Right.
And I was scared on how do I say this, and not negatively impact people.
Right.
And so it often colored how I would share it. So I'd talk about it because I didn't want to. I guess it's not that I didn't want to. I didn't want to go to those dark places. I didn't want to rehash it every time.
Yourself, you didn't want
Yeah, I didn't want to go to those. Sorry, I just touched the mic. I didn't want to go to that pain.
Yeah.
And talking about it, it's still hard. Like it's emotionally hard. It's physically and emotionally draining when I do these talks, but it's worth it because the kids get so much out of it. Because they can. I have the way that I share it. They relive it with me.
Right on.
And
yeah.
so they
That's-
really get engaged in what I'm saying, and they can be there, put themselves there, and they're thinking about what I went through and what it would be like for them as a teenager, and I think that helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as I evolved as a speaker, working on the personal growth aspect of it, dealing with my own issues, what I was dealing with as a fatal car crash survivor, as I dealt with those issues, it allowed me the freedom to be myself on stage. And so often when I notice I get into this way of being on stage sometimes where I'm a robot, kind of just doing my thing, rehashing it. And I notice when I get into those moments that I have to stop and I say, okay, if I could say anything to the audience, if I could make, what difference do I want to make today? What do I want to say? What do I want to leave the kids with?
Right on.
And every time it's something different. And so I just stop and say, what do I want to leave these kids with? Like, what are they dealing with? What would make a difference for these kids?
Right on.
And
yeah.
then, different times will be different things. So just being present with the kids, and getting that they're real. They're not just a staged audience. They're actual real people out there dealing with their own things. And I think because I do that, it makes a huge difference.
We have a phone caller. Andrea Anderson Mason is calling. And Andrea, you're on the air.
Oh, thanks so much. Hey, John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Andrea?
I'm great. We have not seen each other in quite a while.
I know. Yeah, it's been a few years.
It is. So, a little background here. John and I graduated school together.
Wow, amazing. So, Andrea, you remember this well, huh?
I do. So, the night of the incident, it was right next to my house.
Uh-huh.
So, I have very vivid memories of the accident. I recall very vividly hearing the noise and knowing exactly what it was because it was a noise that I was familiar with as cars would miss the turn. What I didn't realize was that it was going to be, dear friends of ours who were involved.
So, Andrea, you heard it. Did you actually go to the crash site? Did you?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
My parents went down. And, when there would be an accident on that corner, because there was a few over the years, you just never knew what you were going to find, what you were going to see. And so my parents immediately went down, and I stayed back at the house.
John, do you remember this? Do you remember?
See, I don't remember any part of the crash. I remember just before the crash, and then waking up at the hospital a month later. I was coherent the whole time. I was talking to people and Annie and things like that. Annie is Andrea's mom.
Annie is Andrea's mom.
Yeah. She was there, and her father Clifton and Dave Robinson from Macadam, and a few other people were there as well. And I don't remember any part of that. I have a black spot on my memory, and so often, I have to rely on people like Andrea and Annie and talking to these different people, like what was it like, what happened, sort of thing, because I don't recall any of it. There's just a void in my memory there. Mm-hmm. So often I rely on these guys to share what it was like for them and what they experienced, and this impacted a lot of people. This was carnage. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, this is something that no human person should ever have to experience. And when
Yeah.
you see this, this horrific crash and the fire and it stays with you for a long time. Andrea, what was it like for your dad, you know, afterwards?
Well, you know, my dad's a
And your
unique
mom.
kind of character anyhow. He was a former military man, and so I would expect that Dad processed things differently than maybe the rest of us do. I know my mother has been deeply affected by it. Actually just called her the other day to let her know that you were in town, because I know it's certainly, it's made a huge impact in her life. And first of all, I do want to tell you how incredibly proud we are of you. It's just incredible what you've done and the impact that you're making on young people's lives. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you for that, Andrea. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, we are at a different stage in our life now. I know that you are a parent. You have a little girl, and then you have twins.
Yes.
And you have this incredibly busy life. How do you balance this all?
That's a great question, because this is the first tour that I'm discovering being on the road with a young family doesn't work. For me anyways, as it is. So I have to figure out that life balance. I've got a 3-year-old daughter, Abigail, and twin girls who are 7 months old, Bridget and Camilla. And my wife's at home, and her mom is staying with us. She's so gracious, Gail. Thank you for that. But Brianna is my wife, is a trooper. Like, Bri, I love you, and I thank you for allowing me to be on this tour, and to be away from home to do this work. And yeah, so you know, I feel blessed that I have these people in my life, but it's still a struggle. The struggle is seeing how it impacts my kids when I'm away. My 3-year-old daughter doesn't know why Dad's not home. Like,
Really?
he's,
Yeah.
you know, so it's hard for her, and so I have to look at restructuring what I do, and yeah, or not be on the road as long, sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's a balance.
And you know, being a parent, it changes us. It changes our perspective.
Oh, yeah.
What advice do you have for us as parents in dealing with this topic? My kids,
Yeah.
they're 13 and 14, so they're in a different age group as yours.
Yeah.
But what advice do you have for us as parents?
I would. It's a tough one. It's you know, we often want to tell our kids what to do, and I think the advice that I would give to parents is, you know, don't just tell your kids what to do. But when I say that, like, don't just tell them to wear their seatbelt, to not drink and drive, to drive the speed limit, and to put away the phone while driving. But really, like, what are you trying to communicate with your kids? Why are you saying that to your kids? You want your kids to come home safe. You want your kids to be safe out there. You don't want them to have to experience the trauma. Talk to your kids. Like really explain why. You know, because when you explain the why, they get it. But when they're bombarded with lots of different don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, you know, it's just overwhelming for them, and they're just going to rebel against it, per se. You know, some kids that are naturally, you know, good kids, they're gonna follow the rules, but the kids that, you know, are not the rule followers are going to resist a bit. So really, just I would suggest really just talking with your kids and on the why, on what happens when something goes wrong. Why is it that you want your kids to come home safe? And I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I find myself, you know, raising my voice and talking at my kid to not do something, but I'm not even explaining why I'm telling her. And I just noticed that it's so quick to say, don't do this,
Right.
you know, but you just got to remember, like, explain why. Like, explain that we don't do it this way. We do it some other way, you know, and this is why we don't do it this way. You know, so that would be my advice. You know, I don't know what the teenage years are like yet, so it's going to be a challenge for
Yes.
sure. You know, we often get our heart kind of rules, kind of leads our mouth sometimes. Does that help, Andrea?
It does. And I know you're looking at getting a few of us together next week. I certainly hope to be there. I was talking to Leslie. We were reminiscing about the impact that the accident had on our lives. And really, we're all, class of 94 is just so incredibly proud of you.
Yeah, thank you for that support. Yeah, and one of the things, with this whole thing is that, I'm in search of how did this impact the community in different ways, and in talking to different people. And so I arranged, while I'm home, to have a lunch or a breakfast with the class of 94 to kind of get together. What was it like when this happened? Like, what was it like for the grad class? Like, that was a graduating year. That's supposed to be a celebratory year. Andrea, what was it like for you graduating that year?
It was dark. It was a different day and age in 94, because if an accident like that happened today, it would be immediately on social media.
Yes.
And back in 94, the message didn't get around as quickly. And I remember coming into the school, and I knew it had happened, but so many other people were just finding out. So it was a heavy, dark feeling.
Andrea, that's exactly what I said too, as a member of the community and a personal friend of the victims. Right? We were just getting bits and pieces of information on how he was doing, getting bits and bits of information on the accident itself. So that it was a dark, quiet period, right?
Yeah, not like what would happen nowadays with social media, right?
Yeah.
With social media, but it would be everywhere.
Yeah.
But we were looking for information of what happened and how did this happen, and how were people coping and how were they doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Andrea, thank you so much for your questions and for your support for John.
Well, thanks for having John on. That was a great choice tonight.
Great. I thought it would be.
Good subject matter. Good speaker.
Good talking to you, John. I hope to see you next Wednesday or next Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break for a couple of minutes. We're going to be right back, and with our final section with John. Be right back. Okay, welcome back. John Higgins Live. Special guest tonight, John Westhaver. So good to have you here. I've got to give a John Westhaver quote. I love this, okay? To quote John, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And baby, I am dead sexy." I absolutely love it. Okay, motivating the kids, getting the kids going. It must be thrilling for you. It must be. I don't know the word. Again, I was at your presentation. I was there. And what are some of the questions that the kids ask you? I didn't get a chance to stay for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different questions. A lot of it is focused around the pain, like, am I still in pain? Do I still experience pain? Which I don't experience pain on a daily basis. I'm very lucky in that sense.
Yeah.
I experience pain when I go for surgeries. My hands get dry once in a while, and I'm supposed to use more moisturizer on them. But if they get really dry, they crack and bleed.
Yeah.
That's kind of painful once in a while. But that's just management, like my management and what I'm doing with my body.
Yeah.
The pain is the psychological pain, dealing with the friends and loss. Those are what I talk to the kids about.
And that's, you still have that psychological pain.
Well, yes, yeah, and no. So, looking back, when I think about it, it still hurts that I lost my friends, and
Yeah, that's
I don't suffer, because I notice for myself that suffering, stems from self. It's if I can choose to not suffer, but not to say that it's not hard. Like it's um, to think about my friends today, like what would they be doing today? Would they have families? When I look at all the experiences that I get to have in life, that and look back and see that they don't get to have these experiences. That's painful sometimes.
yeah.
That hurts, and it definitely kind of makes you really appreciate being alive and having these opportunities and having that second chance. I get to I get to make a difference with a ton of kids. I'm very blessed in what I get to do. I've got a beautiful family. I say to the kids, I have an extraordinary life, and I do. I have an extraordinary life because I live in Victoria, British Columbia, which is one of Canada's destination cities. People go there to vacation, and I live there.
Right on, exactly.
And we own our house there, and we both have great careers. My wife works for the government. I speak full time. We have 3 beautiful, healthy daughters. I really have a kick-ass life. I really do.
Good for you. Good.
I have an extraordinary
for you.
life, and I'm blessed every day. But then when I look at the experience that I get to have, like my friends don't get to have those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I think about that, that's hard.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that, but I don't dwell on those thoughts,
Right.
because and it's hard. Like I was sharing with you the other day. Often so when somebody experiences burn trauma in our burn community world, we use the phrase burniversary. So burniversary is the date of however you got injured.
Okay.
So however you endured your burn trauma, and you celebrate that day. That's your anniversary. You survived horrific ordeal. I don't get I struggle with the celebration of the 29th of April, that I survived this horrific ordeal, because in that same breath there's 3 kids that didn't. 1 being my best friend and 2 being close friends. And so I don't celebrate it, because because there's 3 friends that died. And it's just, it doesn't feel fair sometimes.
Uh-huh.
So I often have to give myself permission to celebrate life,
Right.
to celebrate the fact that I
Yeah.
survived. And that is it's one of the tough things that I deal with. But it's as I go through life and I work on myself and I work through some of my own issues, I am able to kind of let go of some of the things that have impacted me, and not let go of them in like altogether, but just let go of them so that they don't impact me negatively in the future. And that's one of the reasons why I started doing the road safety work, and getting into talking to coming back to the Maritimes and doing the Zero Fatality Tour,
yeah.
really was to help people that are still struggling, get the support, get the whatever they need, talk to whoever they need to kind of work through, the pain and the suffering,
Mm-hmm.
because, we still have people in our community that are still hurting from this, and it's people you wouldn't even expect, people that have maybe they were in class with me, or maybe they were in the community, they worked with some of the kids, or maybe they were cousins or something, and they don't feel like they get to suffer, but they're suffering. And so I just hope that people get the resources, the tools they need to get to heal and to move on.
But I find that you're one of the resources. You're one of the tools.
Oh, of course,
That
yeah. I'm a huge advocate for people getting and talking, and I love talking with people about it. I love talking about and giving people that opportunity to share authentically what it was like for them. Whether it be, a teacher, principal, somebody that worked with one of the boys, or somebody like a family friend,
Yeah.
and really getting like what it's like. It's funny. I was never always like this. wasn't always like this. I was very much self-involved, running through life, running away from all the problems. And for a long time, I had it that this crash happened to John Westhaver and nobody else, sort of thing. You know, there was 3 kids that were killed. Well, they didn't have to deal with it. I had to deal with it in reality.
Okay.
And so I kind of ran away from everything. I ran through life and struggling and scared, worried, you know, every emotion, and really not caring about how I impacted people, but how this crash impacted people, because I was the one suffering and I was hurting. And it wasn't until I started doing some work with Landmark, I got a coach. I had a coach for one of the programs, the Introduction Leaders program. His name was Sig, and he was he is an extraordinary man. And I was talking about doing the speaking, and that wasn't making a big enough difference. And I was talking about wanting to make a difference to these kids, and I cared about everybody. And he said, "Can I be straight with you?" And I said, "Sure, yeah. You know, that's kind of the part of the program. You get to be straight." And he said, "Take the case that you don't care what it's like on everybody else. Like, take the case that you don't care. If you did, you'd actually go and listen. You'd shut up and listen." And it was then that I called the parents, and I heard for the first time what it was like.
Wow.
Because I never knew, like I heard, but I could never really hear, because there was so much noise in my head about not wanting to be blamed or not wanting to hurt anybody, or just all this noise as a teenager.
Have you ever seen an hour go so quick? This hour has gone that quick. I want to thank you so much for coming on here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And I want you to keep on bringing good feelings to people that you do. I just got to say this real quick before we go. Here he is, what he's been through. He's saying to me before the show, "John, calm down." I said to John, I said, this is going to be, he said, "Calm down, John. It's going to be okay." Here's the guy, who's been through it all, and he's telling me to calm down. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, John Westhaver. Thank you so much. I'm going to be back next week with John Higgins Live. See you then. Bye now.